There are emotions that don't scream but silently rule you. There are storms no one sees, but they drag you down from the inside, as if your soul were dissolving with every attempt to calm yourself. And there are moments when you know you don't want to keep reacting that way, but you simply can't help it. You promise yourself you won't explode, that you won't cry again over the same thing, that you won't let it affect you like it did before. But then it comes. That invisible button gets pushed. Your body burns, your mind clouds over, your words wound, and you just watch yourself repeat a pattern you don't even know how to escape from. Sometimes it's rage, other times anxiety, or that hidden weeping that finds no comfort. No one ever taught you how to feel without drowning. No one showed you how to breathe when your heart aches. And over time, you started to believe you're just like this, an emotional person, intense, sensitive, a victim of your own feelings. But let me tell you something, with the brutal honesty this topic deserves, being emotional is not the same as being a slave to your emotions. And you were not born to live reacting. You were born to rule yourself. Most of us carry a past where we learned to survive emotionally however we could. By staying silent, by lashing out, by running away, by repressing, with absent parents or overly authoritarian ones, with partners who made us feel guilty for feeling, with a society that taught us that being strong means showing nothing, and that being weak is feeling too much. But here's the truth. Real strength doesn't lie in denying your emotions. It lies in not being ruled by them. True peace is not in feeling nothing. It's in feeling everything, without losing yourself in anything. And that's where Stoicism enters, not as some magic formula, not as a cold doctrine that turns you into stone, but as a living philosophy, profound and deeply human. That teaches you to face what you feel, and to act not from impulse, but from virtue. Marcus Aurelius, Stoic emperor, lived surrounded by war, betrayal, illness, and the death of those he loved. And still, he wrote a line that confronts us with an undeniable truth. You have power over your mind, not outside events. That is the core of emotional stoicism. It's not about changing what you feel. It's about changing what you do with what you feel. Because yes, you will feel fear, you will feel anger, you will feel sadness, jealousy, guilt, anxiety. But the moment you realize you don't have to act from that place, that you can pause, breathe, reflect, and then choose. In that moment, you reclaim your freedom. And what is freedom if not that? Freedom is being able to feel without being consumed by what you feel. It's being able to think clearly, even when your heart is trembling. It's not letting an emotion decide your fate for you. And if you're here, listening to this, it's no coincidence. Maybe you're already tired of reacting and then regretting it. Maybe it already hurts to see how your emotions sabotage your relationships, your work, your health. Or maybe deep down, you just know there's another way to live. A calmer way, a steadier way, a more conscious way, a way that's more yours. This episode is for you. For you who are tired of living at the mercy of what you feel. For you who want to stop exploding, crying in silence, feeling guilty for not being able to control yourself. For you who know you need peace. But not just any peace, a real peace, solid, earned through discipline, awareness, and transformation. Throughout these lessons, you'll discover that emotional mastery isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about recognizing it, understanding it, channeling it, and transcending it. You'll come to see that your emotions are not the enemy. They're signals, bridges, guides, and that slavery is not in feeling them, but in living at their mercy without developing the muscle of self-control. Every one of the Stoic teachings you're about to hear isn't theory. They're practical tools, an invitation to observe yourself with more clarity, to live with more temperance, and to reclaim what has always been yours, the power to choose how to respond. Because at the end of the day, there is no greater freedom than being the master of yourself. And that's why we're here, to stop being slaves to what we feel, and start living as true guardians of our mind and heart. Before we begin, I want you to declare your commitment by writing in the comments, "From today on, my emotions will not decide for me." That phrase will be your reminder that you are here to take back control, not to keep reacting from impulse. This is the moment to prove to yourself that you can feel everything without losing yourself in any of it, because your peace is not negotiable. Without further ado, let's begin. Stoic Lesson 1. Feeling is not a choice, but reacting is. Sometimes you feel like an emotional bomb with a short fuse, not because you want to, but because everything affects you more than you'd like to admit. You tell yourself you'll control your temper, that this time you won't react, that you'll stay calm. But then something happens, an unexpected comment, a cold attitude, an unjust situation, and suddenly everything explodes. You shout, you shut down, you cry, or you walk away without a word, yet inside you're boiling, and then comes the regret. Again, another reaction you couldn't control, another moment when your emotions decided for you. It seems like when you feel something intensely, there's no turning back. As if what you feel automatically becomes what you do, as if there were no middle ground, no pause, no alternative to reacting from pure emotion. But there is. And that's exactly where the first Stoic principle we must urgently remember is born. Feeling is not a choice, but reacting is. You don't choose when anger appears, when anxiety kicks in, or when pain settles in your chest. That's not within your control. Your emotions arrive without permission, without logic, without schedule, but what you do with them, that is under your control. That is your battlefield. That is your domain. Marcus Aurelius expressed it with timeless clarity. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your judgment about it, and you have the power to revoke this at any moment. It's not what you feel that enslaves you, it's what you do with what you feel. But to achieve this, you need conscious practice, emotional training, a new mental habit to break the old automatic reactions. For years, we've lived reacting impulsively, conditioned by our surroundings, raised to believe that if you feel something intense, you must express it immediately, as if emotional outbursts were authenticity, as if self-control were repression. But Stoicism offers something radically different. Don't deny what you feel, but don't become a slave to your impulses. Your greatest power as a human being is the ability to choose your response. Between what happens to you and what you do, there is space. And that space, though it seems small, can change everything. Think about it. How many times have you regretted an emotional reaction? How many rushed decisions did you make under the rule of your feelings? How many relationships have suffered because you couldn't pause before acting? The difference between a governed life and a chaotic one is not the intensity of your feelings. It's your ability to act without being ruled by them. A Stoic is not a cold person. A Stoic is someone who chooses not to react from emotion, but from reason and virtue. This takes courage, because when you're in the middle of an emotional fire, your instinct screams, "Respond now." Your mind clouds, your body reacts. Every part of you shouts, "This is urgent, do something now." But it isn't. Most emotions just want to be acknowledged, not obeyed. You don't have to reply to that message when you're furious. You don't have to make a big decision when you're overwhelmed. You don't have to follow every emotion to its end just because it showed up. You can breathe, pause, observe, and then decide. That is freedom. That is power. That is being Stoic. Imagine how different your life would be if you practiced that space dash. That sacred moment between what you feel and what you do. That second of inner silence where you take back the wheel. Where you can tell yourself, this feeling is intense, but it won't decide for me. This is where emotional mastery is built, not by repressing feelings, but by governing what you choose to do with them. Emotions, no matter how intense, don't last as long as you think. Anger fades, sadness softens, anxiety calms down. But if you act from them, The consequences can last years. Words that cut, decisions that break, bridges that burn, and all because you confused what you feel with who you are. You believed a fleeting emotion had the right to steer your life. Marcus Aurelius also wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, not your emotions, not your impulses, not your wounds, but on what you choose to think and do, even when everything burns inside." So next time you feel something taking over you, don't run, don't explode, don't flee. Ask yourself this simple, powerful Stoic question: is this emotion controlling me, or am I observing it? Then choose. Choose who's in charge. Choose whether you'll be a slave to your emotions or the governor of your soul. Because you are not here to react. You are here to choose, and that choice, even if small, even if invisible to the world, will be your deepest victory, the one that makes you free, the one that makes you unshakable, the one that step by step will turn you into a true Stoic. Stoic lesson. Second, observe your emotions. Don't identify with them. There are days when you feel so sad that you start thinking you are a sad person. There are moments when the anxiety is so intense that you become convinced you are an anxious person. And when anger consumes you, you believe you are someone explosive, irritable, unstable. You define yourself by what you're feeling. You confuse yourself with your emotions, but you are not that. You are not your sadness. You are not your anxiety. You are not your anger, nor your fear, nor your emptiness, not even that momentary joy that sometimes feels like disguised euphoria. You are much more than everything you feel. The problem is that no one taught us how to make that distinction. We grew up believing that if something hurts, it means there's something wrong with us, that if we feel too much, we're broken, or that if we can't control what we feel, then we're weak. And in that confusion, we begin to live as if each emotion were an identity, as if every emotional state defined who we are. But Epictetus, with the serenity of a sage who understood the human mind better than any modern therapist, left us a brutally clear teaching. We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens to us. And that also applies to what we feel. What affects you is not the emotion itself, but the story you tell yourself about that emotion. It's that automatic narrative that arises and whispers to you, "You're always sad. Something must be wrong with you. You're too sensitive. No one's going to understand you. Look how you fall apart. You'll never be able to handle this." And you know what that is? A trap. A mental prison you're building every time you confuse your emotional state with your identity. But there's a way out, and it's simpler and more powerful than it seems. Observe instead of identifying. Observe what you feel without turning it into part of your definition. Observe sadness like a passing cloud. Observe anxiety like a gust of wind. Observe anger like a flame that arises but doesn't need to spread. It's as if you climb a step inside yourself. From there you can see what you're feeling without being dragged by it, without turning it into me. Instead of saying, "I'm sad," you could start saying, "I'm experiencing sadness." And while it may seem like a subtle difference, it completely changes your relationship with what you feel. Because when you say, "I'm sad," your whole being gets tinted by that emotion. But when you say, "I'm experiencing sadness," you remind yourself that this is just a part of what's happening to you, not who you are. This is not about denying emotions, nor minimizing them, nor pretending they're not there. It's about changing the place from which you view them. Epictetus, who lived much of his life as a slave and still developed a philosophy of inner freedom, understood this perfectly. What you can control is not what you feel, but the attitude you take toward it. And the most powerful attitude is that of the Stoic observer, the one who feels everything but doesn't get lost in anything, the one who looks at their emotion like someone watching a storm through a window, with respect, with attention, but without needing to go out and get soaked. Imagine for a moment that your mind is like a house with many rooms. Your emotions come and go all the time. Some arrive forcefully, like an unexpected visitor banging at the door. Others settle in without asking. But you are the owner of the house, and you decide whether to let them in, how long they stay, and in which room. You don't need to let every emotion take control of the main hall. You don't need to allow sadness to sit on your inner throne and tell you who you are. You can simply observe it. You can say, I know you're here, I acknowledge you, but you're not going to decide for me. And that, though it may sound simple, is a radical form of emotional freedom, because it allows you to keep going even when you feel fear. It allows you to act calmly even when you feel anger. It allows you to care for yourself even when you feel hopelessness. Being stoic is not being insensitive. It's being conscious. It's developing a mature relationship with what you feel. And that takes practice. Every time you catch yourself saying, that's just how I am. This is too much for me. I can't help it. Pause, breathe, and observe. Ask yourself the key question. Is this that I'm feeling really me? Or is it just something that's happening inside me? And if you can create that space, even for an instant, then you've already taken a step toward your inner autonomy, a step toward your composure, a step toward yourself, because you are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your fears. You are the one who observes them. You are the one who listens to them. You are the one who decides what to do with all of it. And the more you develop that capacity, the more you'll notice something curious. Emotions lose their strength when you stop feeding them with your identification. Sadness becomes lighter, anger dissolves faster, anxiety deflates, because they no longer have so much power over you. You don't deny them, you don't repress them, you simply observe and then choose. That is the Stoic practice, and that is the goal, and also the path, because you are not here to be an emotional victim. You are here to learn to look at what you feel with clarity and keep walking. Feeling is not a weakness, but letting your emotions decide for you takes away your freedom. If you've ever grown tired of reacting without knowing why, subscribing might seem like a small gesture, but for us, it's the beginning of your transformation. Here you'll learn to feel with awareness, to respond with composure, and to reclaim control of your inner world. Your mind deserves to be your ally, not your prison. Your peace starts now. Stoic lesson. Third, your mind must rule, not your impulses. It has happened to you. You're in the middle of an argument with someone and suddenly you stop listening. You only feel. You feel the need to have the last word. You feel like if you don't say what you think, you'll explode. You feel like if you don't react now, you'll lose. And so you do. You react, sometimes with sharp words, or by slamming a door, or with a wounding silence. And when the impulse passes, when the internal storm calms down, you look in the mirror and think, why did I react like that? What happened to me? I didn't want to act that way. And yet you did. It's as if a part of you activated without your permission, as if your rational mind shut down and your impulses took the wheel, and you who wants to act calmly, with temperance, with intelligence, were left trapped in the back seat. This pattern repeats itself again and again, not just in arguments, also when you feel humiliated or rejected or frustrated or afraid. There's an automatic visceral reaction that takes over before you can think. And then, as always, comes the regret. But what if I told you that you're not doomed to react that way? What if I told you that you can change that cycle, not with magic or forced control, but with a practice that begins in the soul? Seneca wrote it down with a clarity that needs no modern interpretation. No passion remains in our soul without our consent. If we allow it in, it's because we've nourished it. The impulse is not the problem. The problem is that we've allowed it to rule. We've given it the throne of our will, but that throne doesn't belong to it. It belongs to your mind, to your reason, to that inner place where you can see things as they truly are, without the distortion of momentary impulse. And that's the Stoic task, to restore the mind to its rightful leadership. not as a rigid dictator that represses everything, but as a firm guide that provides direction when emotions threaten to overflow. And how is that done? By first recognizing that between stimulus and response, there is a space, a minimal interval, a second of clarity, a breath. And that second, though small, holds the power to change everything. Imagine someone provokes you with a cruel comment. Your impulse tells you, respond now, defend yourself, attack. But your mind, if you give it space, can say, is this battle worth it? Will I feel better or worse afterward? Am I acting from virtue or from ego? That inner dialogue doesn't always come naturally. You must train it. You must strengthen it like a muscle that has atrophied over the years because we've spent too much time acting like puppets of our impulses. Too much time believing that acting from the heart means acting without thinking, but the heart without the mind becomes blind, and emotion without reflection becomes dangerous. A Stoic is not someone who doesn't feel, it's someone who learns to pause. And that pause is everything. It's the moment that separates reaction from decision. It's the instant when you reclaim control. When you are no longer a victim of your past, nor a hostage of your nervous system. When you can choose to act with integrity, not merely with instinct. Seneca put it this way: the first punishment of the guilty is that they cannot avoid being guilty. But you don't have to be guilty of your automatic reactions. You can practice the art of stopping, of breathing, of reflecting before speaking, of observing yourself before acting. Is it easy? Number, is it worth it? More than anything, because true strength is not shown in the volume of your voice when you're angry, nor in your ability to respond quickly in an argument. It's shown in your capacity to remain steady when everything inside you wants to overflow. It's shown in your power to say, I don't need to give in to this. I won't let this impulse decide for me. I choose. That is the most sacred act of rebellion. That is the purest act of freedom. That is the quietest and most powerful victory. Not yielding to what burns inside you, but transforming it into light. But that doesn't happen overnight. And it doesn't happen without awareness. It requires training. It requires pausing daily and observing. What emotions dominate me? What reaction patterns keep repeating? Where do I most often lose control? And then cultivate temperance, a virtue that Stoicism doesn't treat as an ideal, but as a daily discipline. Temperance to restrain the impulse, to think before speaking, to choose before acting. When your mind rules, you're not denying your emotions, you're guiding them. You're saying, thank you, impulse, for letting me know that something affects me, but you're not going to decide for me. And in that act, you reclaim your dignity. Because there is no greater dignity than looking in the mirror and knowing that what you did was what you chose to do, not what pain dictated, not what pride screamed, not what fear demanded, but what you, with clarity and temperance, chose from the best in you. That is the Stoic goal, not emotional perfection, but inner governance, not the absence of emotions, but internal leadership over them. And you, every time you choose to pause, breathe, reflect, observe, decide, you are building that leadership. You are strengthening that mind. You are affirming your freedom, because at the end of the day, true power doesn't lie in reacting stronger, but in reacting less, in acting with wisdom, in living from virtue, not from impulse. And that, though no one may applaud it, makes you invincible on the inside. Stoic lesson 4th. Emotions are temporary, not absolute truths. When you're in the middle of an intense emotion, everything feels final. If it hurts, you think it will always hurt. If you're angry, you feel that anger is justified, that there's no other way to see it. If sadness takes over, life turns grey, and you convince yourself it will stay that way tomorrow and maybe forever. Emotions have that brutal capacity. They seem eternal while we're feeling them. They trap us in a dark tunnel with no visible exit. They convince us that the current state is real, absolute, undeniable. That if we feel anxious, something bad must be about to happen. That if we feel anger, it's because we're right. That if we feel rejected, it's because we're worthless. But what we feel isn't always true. And what we believe when emotions are running high isn't necessarily true either. Marcus Aurelius understood this with overwhelming clarity. In the middle of wars, betrayals, illness, and responsibilities that would have broken any other man, he wrote in his Meditations, "Everything we see is change. Everything we feel is perception." Think about that line. Everything we feel is perception. That means your sadness is not the truth. It's just one way your mind is interpreting what's happening. Your anxiety isn't the truth either. It's simply a reaction from your system trying to protect you. And your anger is also not the truth. It's just a signal that something is confronting, frustrating, or wounding your ego. But none of those emotions have to dictate your reality, because none of them are permanent. None of them ever have been. Think back. Do you remember a time when you felt like you couldn't go on, when everything seemed unbearable, when you were convinced something was breaking inside you? And yet, it passed, maybe slowly, maybe with scars, but it passed. The emotion faded, the intensity settled. Your mind returned to clarity. That's the great deception of intense emotion. It makes you believe that this state is eternal, and from there, it pushes you to make decisions you shouldn't make. When you're very sad, you isolate yourself. When you're very angry, you say things that hurt more than the original offense. When you're anxious, you interpret everything as a threat. And in every one of those cases, you're mistaken, because you're making permanent decisions based on temporary emotions. You're believing that what you feel defines what is. But Stoicism invites you to step back, to observe what you feel without turning it into a dogma, to remember that no emotion has the final word, not because you should distrust yourself, but because you should trust in something greater within you. Reason, virtue, awareness. When Marcus Aurelius felt fear, he didn't deny it. He acknowledged it, he wrote it down, he observed it, and then he asked himself, is this fear useful? Does this fear reflect something true or just something temporary? What will happen if I act from serenity, not from this emotion? And in that simple, daily, quiet practice lay the power of the wisest emperor in history, to remember that everything passes. That must be your anchor too. When emotion overwhelms you, repeat it. This will pass. This doesn't define my truth. This is a wave, not the ocean. Because when you understand that what you feel is not an absolute truth, but a transitory phenomenon, you regain perspective. You no longer react in desperation. You no longer make impulsive decisions. You no longer punish yourself for feeling. You simply recognize that you're human, that you feel, but that you are not only what you feel, and that changes everything. Imagine someone says something that hurts you. In that moment, every fiber of your being wants to strike back. Your pride screams. Your emotion wants to attack or flee. But if you breathe and remember, this is just an intense emotion, and it will pass. Then you don't need to react from the fire. You can wait for the tide to recede, for the mind to clear, and from there, choose. That waiting is an act of wisdom. That waiting is a form of virtue. That waiting is a bridge between chaos and clarity. And though the modern world pushes us to act fast, to solve now, to respond instantly, the Stoic grants themselves the permission to wait, because they know that emotions, like the seasons, always change, and there is no emotional storm that lasts forever. No inner fire that won't burn out if you stop feeding it. No sadness that won't ease if you move through it patiently. So when you feel something intense, don't make decisions. Don't speak from that place. Don't close chapters from that place. Don't judge yourself from that place. And above all, don't believe everything your emotion tells you. Emotions have a loud voice, but not always an accurate one. Sadness might tell you that no one loves you. Anger might tell you to destroy what you love. Anxiety might tell you something bad is coming. But none of them can see the whole picture. Only you can, if you give yourself time. And that time is called pause. That virtue is called temperance. That practice is called Stoic philosophy. Because at the end of the day, you can learn to live with everything you feel, without letting any of it define your path. Feeling is not the problem. Believing that what you feel is absolute truth, that's what chains you. But if you learn to wait, to breathe, to let the emotion pass without becoming it, then every emotion becomes what it was always meant to be, a messenger, not a dictator, a signal, not a sentence, an opportunity to know yourself, not to lose yourself. And there, right there, begins your true emotional freedom. Stoic lesson. Fifth, don't repress what you feel, channel it wisely. For a long time you believed that being strong meant swallowing everything you felt, that bravery was about staying silent, that maturity meant not crying, that the right thing was to keep going as if nothing was wrong, to smile even though something inside you was breaking, to stay firm even though your body was trembling, to keep helping others even when you were falling apart yourself. And people praised you for that, for being the rock, the one who endures, the one who never breaks. But at what cost? By forcing yourself to swallow emotions, you learn to disconnect from yourself, to stop trusting what you feel, to feel guilty just for feeling. And without realizing it, you started building an internal prison, one where your emotions weren't allowed out, and you weren't allowed to fully be. But Stoicism, far from the cold, rigid caricature it's often mistaken for, does not teach repression. It teaches redirection. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic sages, said it clearly. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. And we could add, it's not the emotions that harm us, but what we do with them. Because unexpressed emotion doesn't disappear, it simply transforms. Repressed anger turns into bitterness. Ignored sadness becomes chronic soul fatigue. Unattended anxiety manifests as insomnia, irritability, or even illness. Silence is not the same as healing. Repression is not the same as mastery. And hiding what you feel is not the same as self-control. The true Stoic doesn't become an emotional robot. He doesn't walk through life numb. He doesn't block his humanity. The true Stoic feels, but he knows what to do with what he feels. That's the difference. That's where freedom begins. Because what you repress controls you from the shadows. But what you acknowledge and channel strengthens you from awareness. Anger, for example, is not poison in itself. It's raw energy, energy that you can use to destroy or to transform. You can scream, break things, hurt others. Or you can channel that anger into just action, healthy boundaries, or a firm decision. Sadness is not weakness. It's sensitivity, depth, a call to stop and look within. You can drown in it, or you can let it guide you to neglected parts of yourself, to old wounds that still ache, to memories that deserve your attention. And anxiety is not always the enemy. Often it's an alarm saying, pay attention, you're overwhelmed, you're pushing too hard, you've lost your center. Don't repress that voice. Listen to it, but don't hand it the steering wheel. Just listen and act wisely. That is channeling. That is living emotionally awake. That is the Stoic balance, so often misunderstood, because if you feel rage and deny it, it piles up. If you feel fear and bury it, it leaks out elsewhere. If you feel sadness and fake a smile, it becomes a dull ache that contaminates everything. But if you say, I'm feeling this and I'm going to observe it. I'll write about this, meditate, walk with myself. I'll speak calmly, step back, turn this emotion into a lucid response. Then the emotion becomes power, and that power is internal, steady, real. It doesn't impose, it doesn't explode, it doesn't hurt, but it transforms. The Stoic uses emotion like the river uses its current. He doesn't stop it, doesn't let it flood. He guides it. And though it may seem simple, it's one of the most profound practices you can develop. We live among extremes. On one side, those who explode emotionally without a filter. On the other, those who never say what they feel and end up poisoned inside. And in the middle, The Stoics. Those who learn to name what they feel without becoming it. Those who feel deeply but respond virtuously. Think about this. When was the last time you gave yourself permission to feel without guilt, without judgment, without rushing to fix it? When was the last time you channeled your emotion consciously? Could it be that you need less repression and more redirection? Channeling what you feel is not just spiritual, it's deeply practical. It's what lets you have a hard conversation without breaking the bond. It's what helps you get through a crisis without losing your peace. It's what lets you cry and then get back up with more clarity. Because crying is not surrender, feeling is not failure, and showing your humanity doesn't make you weak. It makes you real, it makes you present, it makes you more you. The trick isn't in eliminating emotion, it's in choosing what you do with it. And that's what sets the Stoic apart. Not that he doesn't feel, but that he never acts as a slave to what he feels. Epictetus also said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." And you can't be master of yourself if emotions drive you to act without thinking, if you decide without filtering, if you speak without reflection, if you act without pause. But if you learn to channel, if you make your emotion a bridge, not a prison, then you are already free, not because you don't feel, but because you feel and choose wisely what to do with it. That's the goal, and also the path. Stoic lesson. 6th. Your inner peace is worth more than any impulse. How many times have you lost your calm over something that, in time, no longer mattered? How many times have you been dragged into a pointless argument, a misinterpreted message, or someone else's attitude that didn't even deserve a fraction of your energy? You know it well. You lost control over a comment. Your entire day was ruined by something you couldn't change. You ended up saying things you didn't mean, feeling emotions you didn't want to feel, simply because you gave away the power of your peace to something external. And when you look back, you understand. It wasn't worth it. But in the moment, in that tense, prideful, impulsive, or painful instant, it felt impossible to act differently. Because when impulse dominates, reason goes silent. When emotion burns, calm disappears. When you're obsessed with being right, with defending yourself, with delivering your own justice, what you lose is far more valuable than a fleeting victory. You lose your peace. Seneca, one of the most lucid Stoic sages in history, warned clearly, "The greatest power is self-mastery." And within that mastery lies an unshakable priority: to preserve your serenity above any provocation. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means that nothing has the right to disturb the most sacred thing you possess, your inner center. Because yes, others can shout at you, but you choose whether to shout back. They can offend you, but you choose whether to play along. They can disappoint you, but you choose whether to poison your soul with resentment. The Stoic doesn't live in a bubble. They know the world is full of injustice, of hurtful people, of emotional chaos. But they also know their freedom doesn't lie in avoiding these things, but in choosing their response without losing their peace. And that takes training, because for years you were taught to react, to defend yourself immediately, to strike back, to never stay silent, to show strength as a synonym for confrontation. But true strength doesn't shout. True strength doesn't need to explode. True firmness expresses itself in the silence of someone who refuses to be dragged down. The next time you feel something pushing you to react, pause, not to repress yourself, but to protect yourself. Remember this: every time you give in to impulse, you're choosing to give away your peace. You're saying, "This external thing is more important than my calm." And that's a betrayal of yourself. No reaction is worth that much. No argument deserves your center. No passing emotion should hold power over your balance. Imagine your inner peace as a temple, built from years of inner work, meditation, healed wounds, conscious decisions. Will you let someone's dirty words walk into that temple? Will you let a provocation bring it crashing down? Will you hand over the keys of your serenity to someone who doesn't even know your journey? Number You didn't train your mind so that anyone could disturb it. You didn't walk this path to fall at the first emotional stumble. You are not a slave to circumstances. You are the guardian of your peace. And that peace, when it's real, is not begged for. It's protected, it's prioritized, it's honored. That doesn't mean becoming passive, submissive, or indifferent. It means choosing your battles, knowing when to speak and when to be silent, when to step in and when to let go, when it's worth pushing and when it's wiser to withdraw. Impulse wants to impose. Wisdom chooses to preserve. Ego wants to win. Virtue seeks peace. And you decide which side you're on. In every conversation, in every reaction, in every moment where you could destroy or preserve. Think about this. What's the point of being right if your heart ends up filled with anger? What's the point of winning a fight if you lose sleep over what you said? What's the point of responding fast if it cost you days of regret? Nothing is worth more than your peace. Nothing. That's the Stoic compass. Not the emotion of the moment, not the craving for validation, not the urge to respond, but the conscious choice to preserve your serenity as your most valuable treasure. Because if they take everything from you but you keep your peace, you've lost nothing. But if you have everything and lose your inner calm, then you're truly empty. Your peace is non-negotiable. Your center is not for sale. Your calm does not depend on what others do, say, or provoke. It depends solely on you, on your practice, on your awareness, on your commitment to that part of you that has understood that life is best lived from within. And from that place, no impulse has power, no ego can drag you down, no emotion enslaves you, because you've already decided, and you've chosen wisely. Your peace is worth more. If you've read this far, it means you're ready to stop living under the rule of what you feel. Subscribe and comment, I deserve to feel without losing myself, to affirm your commitment to a serene and conscious life. This is just the first step toward an existence where your emotions don't rule you, you choose. When you reach the 9th lesson, you'll discover a revelation that could transform the way you relate to yourself. Don't miss it. It may be the clarity your soul needed. Let's continue. Stoic lesson, 7th. Don't run from difficult emotions. Face them with courage. There are emotions no one wants to feel. Fear, sadness, guilt, shame, loneliness, emptiness. The moment they appear, we want to cover them up. We distract ourselves. We keep busy. We eat. We consume. We post. We run anywhere just to avoid feeling, because we were raised with the idea that if something hurts, we must silence it. That if an emotion is uncomfortable, we should ignore it, and that if what we feel isn't positive, then it must be fixed, beaten, or hidden. But the soul doesn't work that way. What is repressed rots. What is denied accumulates. What isn't faced repeats itself, and the price of not looking your most uncomfortable emotions in the eye is always higher than the initial fear of feeling them. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This also applies to the emotional world. The difficult emotion isn't an obstacle to your peace. It is the path to it. But only if you dare to walk it. Only if instead of fleeing you sit with your sadness and listen. Only if, instead of distracting yourself, you take a deep breath and give space to your fear. Only if, instead of refusing to feel, you choose to stay with yourself, right where it hurts the most. Because that's where healing begins. That's where temperance is born. That's where character is forged. Uncomfortable emotions are teachers in disguise. They show up with the face of pain, but they carry lessons of strength, awareness, and transformation. Sadness forces you to pause, to examine what you're ignoring, to release what's already gone, to accept what you cannot control. Fear shows you your inner limits, your unhealed wounds, your need for certainties life doesn't offer, and your capacity to endure far more than you imagine. Guilt points out your inconsistencies, not so you punish yourself, but so you reconcile with yourself, so you repair. so you learn, so you evolve. But none of that happens if you run, if you flee every time your chest tightens, if you distract yourself whenever discomfort arises, if you look away every time your soul asks for your presence. The Stoic doesn't run. The Stoic breathes and stays, looks straight ahead, feels without surrendering, accepts without giving in, listens without identifying. That is real emotional courage. Not yelling louder, not pretending to be invulnerable, but looking at yourself without fear, staying with yourself even when it hurts, holding yourself when no one else does. Because in those moments when you choose not to run, something changes forever. You're no longer a slave to what you feel. You're a witness, a learner, an inner warrior who understands that freedom doesn't lie in avoiding pain, but in walking through it without losing yourself. And how do you do that? How do you face a difficult emotion without being consumed by it? With presence, with awareness, with respect. You sit with yourself. You name what you feel without judgment, without rushing it away, without needing to understand it all at once. You simply stay. You breathe, and you repeat to yourself, what I feel doesn't destroy me, it teaches me. What discomforts me doesn't define me, it shapes me. What hurts isn't eternal, it's here to reveal something. And then something opens, a door, an understanding, an insight, a tear that cleanses, a memory that frees, a truth that emerges, because when you dare to stay, you discover the emotion didn't come to destroy you. It came to deliver something, but to receive it, you must stay. You must hold the trembling without shutting down. You must allow yourself to be human without fearing the break, because there is no temperance without vulnerability, no serenity without shadow, and no self-knowledge without uncomfortable emotions. Marcus Aurelius faced grief, illness, betrayal, immense responsibility. And still he wrote each night. He observed himself. He spoke with firmness and compassion. He didn't deny his humanity. He directed it. And that daily practice became his shield, his freedom, his mastery. You can practice that too. You don't need immediate answers, just the commitment not to abandon your emotional world when it needs you most. When fear appears, don't run. Ask it, what do you need to show me? When sadness comes, don't cover it. Ask it, what are you pointing out that I must release? When guilt speaks, don't punish yourself. Ask it, what inconsistency are you inviting me to repair? That dialogue is wisdom. That practice is living philosophy. That is true strength, feeling everything without betraying yourself. And if you ever doubt, if you ever don't know what to do with what you feel, remember this, the Stoic doesn't escape. He transforms, doesn't deny, he observes, doesn't repress, he channels, and doesn't hide, he shows up with courage. That is you, if you choose to stay, if you choose not to run, if you choose to look your shadow in the eyes and discover the light behind it. Stoic lesson. 8th, your emotional stability depends solely on you. It might feel unfair, but it's true. No one will take care of your emotional balance the way you should. No one will save you from your internal highs and lows. No one is responsible for regulating your inner world every time something or someone throws you off. And here's the hardest part. No one is obligated to. Sometimes without realizing it, we live with the expectation that others should help us feel better, that our partner should say exactly what we need to calm us, that our friends should understand our wounds without needing explanation, that the world should offer us comfort, validation, understanding every time something shakes us internally. But the truth is different, and though it hurts, it sets you free. The only person truly responsible for your emotional stability is you. Epictetus said it with absolute clarity. As long as you make someone else responsible for your happiness, you remain a slave. The same goes for your calm, your peace, your stability. When you hand over your serenity to someone else's behavior, you become vulnerable to chaos. When you believe you need someone to change so you can feel okay, you become a hostage to what you cannot control. When you tie your emotional state to external factors, you live on a roller coaster. No brakes, no direction, no rest. And you've already lived this. You've felt your day ruined by a message left unanswered. You've felt your joy depend on how others treat you. You've felt your peace collapse when things don't go as planned. But that's not balance. That's emotional dependency disguised as sensitivity. That's emotional fragility disguised as love. That's handing over the steering wheel of your inner life to what you will never fully control, the external world. Stoicism comes to remind you of a raw but powerful truth. Everything you need to feel stable is already within you. You just have to learn how to govern it. And it starts with one firm decision: to radically take responsibility for what you feel. That doesn't mean blaming yourself for your emotions. It's not about forcing peace. It's about no longer placing the cause of your imbalance outside of you. If you feel hurt, it's not someone else's job to heal you. If you feel agitated, it's not anyone's duty to calm you. If you feel empty, you can't expect someone else to fill you up. That's your task, your commitment to yourself, your most sacred responsibility. And when you accept it, everything changes. You no longer need everything around you to be okay in order to be okay. You no longer fall apart over every comment. You no longer demand others walk on eggshells to avoid upsetting you. Instead, you begin to build something much deeper, a solid, independent, sober, serene, emotional center. Picture this. You're in a difficult conversation. The other person gets heated, raises their voice, throws accusations, tries to provoke you, but you've worked on yourself, you've trained your mind, you've observed your reactions, and you know you choose how to respond, so you choose not to be dragged into it. You breathe, you listen, you speak from temperance, and when it's over you feel proud, because once you would have reacted just as strongly, or worse, but today you chose not to give away your stability. That's power, true power, the kind that doesn't need applause or witnesses, the kind that's earned in the silence of your inner world. And yes, there will be days when it's harder, days when everything irritates you, days when it feels like too much. But even then you can remind yourself, this feeling is mine, and I will take care of it. I don't need anyone to rescue me. I can hold myself. My peace doesn't depend on what happens. It depends on what I do with what happens. That's not coldness. It's emotional maturity. It's spiritual sobriety. It's stoic strength that doesn't run from pain, but doesn't delegate it either, because deep down, you know no one can regulate your mind for you. No one can choose which thoughts to feed. No one can stop your impulse to react. No one can teach you to breathe through the fire if you don't practice it yourself. So each time something disturbs you, ask yourself, am I waiting for someone to give me peace, or can I give it to myself? And then act. Not with harshness, but with firmness. Not with denial, but with responsibility. Do whatever you need to return to yourself. Meditate, write, walk, breathe. Ask for help if you need it, but not so they stabilize you, only so they can accompany you as you stabilize yourself. Because you are not an emotional victim. You are a conscious being, and that means you can choose how to respond, how to calm yourself, how to rebuild every time you need to. Marcus Aurelius faced death, betrayal, loss, deep disappointment. But instead of being consumed, he wrote each night to stay steady. He returned to himself, to his principles, to his purpose, to his center, and that kept him free, serene, whole. You can do the same. You don't need to control the world. You just need to stop giving the world your center. Your peace is within, your balance is possible, and your stability depends solely on you. If this knowledge is helping you understand and master what you feel, follow us and become part of this space where we learn to reclaim inner peace and live with awareness. 9th Stoic lesson. Emotions reveal what you need to work on within yourself. Most people run from what they feel without realizing that every intense emotion is a signal, a clue, an opportunity to look inward, a mirror that reflects not the outside world, but something unresolved within. But that hurts, and that's why we prefer to blame others. We say they made us feel bad, that it's the boss's fault, the partner's, the absent father's, the friend who let us down. It's easier to look outward than to accept an uncomfortable truth. What shakes you the most emotionally usually points to your most fragile parts. Seneca said it bluntly. No one suffers injustice. What we call injustice is often just the price of our ignorance. Harsh, isn't it? But also liberating, because if what hurts you reveals something you need to work on, then you're no longer a victim. You're a student of life, a brave observer of your own inner world, someone who doesn't seek blame but seeks roots. And that's exactly where real Stoic work begins. Take anger, for example. That which overflows when you're disrespected, contradicted, or when things don't go your way. What if it's not just anger? What if underneath lies insecurity, a need for control, a fear of things going wrong because deep down you don't feel good enough, or sadness, the one that creeps in when you feel rejected, invalidated, or when you compare yourself? What if it's more than just sadness? What if it's an old wound still open, an unmet emotional need, a fragile self-image that crumbles under the gaze of others? Or anxiety, the kind that settles in your chest without warning, that tightens your stomach, that speeds up your thoughts? What if it's not just stress? What if it's an overload of future, a lack of trust in yourself? An overworked mind that doesn't know how to stop because it fears it's not enough. Every intense emotion has a story, and the Stoic doesn't settle for the symptom. He seeks the source. He doesn't just want to stop feeling. He wants to understand why it arises and what it means for his evolution. That is courage. That is true self-awareness. That is using emotions as allies on the path of personal growth. Because what you don't observe repeats. What you don't understand becomes a pattern, and what you don't work through becomes an invisible prison that rules your decisions. But you're not here to live ruled by your past. You're here to turn what hurt you into learning, what you felt into awareness, what pained you into wisdom. And that only happens when you dare to look with honesty. Every time something deeply upsets you, don't rush to react. Pause and ask yourself, what part of me is reacting here? What need of mine is being triggered? What wound, belief, or fear am I projecting onto what's hurting me? Do it without guilt. Do it without judgment. Do it with humility, because there's nothing nobler than admitting you still have things to heal, not out of lack, but out of commitment to yourself. Epictetus said, "Do not concern yourself with external circumstances. Concern yourself with your response to them." And we could add, do not focus only on what you feel, but on what it reveals about you. That shift in perspective changes everything. It's no longer about not feeling, nor repressing, nor pretending nothing affects you. It's about using each emotion as a map, as an inner guide that shows you which part of you needs attention, care, evolution. Do you feel jealousy? Observe what part of you fears not being enough. Do you get angry easily? Ask what part of you needs to always be in control. Do you struggle to forgive? Perhaps you're still punishing yourself for your own mistakes. Do you feel anxious? Maybe your inner child needs more safety than you're providing. This isn't obsessive self-analysis. It's loving awareness. It's philosophy in action. It's emotional maturity. And when you do this consistently, something starts to shift. You don't get angry the same way. You don't cry for the same reasons. You don't react with the same intensity, not because you've stopped feeling, but because you no longer believe everything you feel. You no longer identify with it. You no longer get lost in it. Now you understand it. And by understanding it, you transcend it. That's what a Stoic does. He doesn't avoid pain. He interrogates it. He doesn't dodge emotion. He decodes it. He doesn't see himself as a victim. He becomes the protagonist of his inner evolution. Because every intense emotion, if you listen carefully, is telling you, there's something here to look at. There's something here to strengthen. There's a part of you here that hasn't yet healed. And you get to choose to suppress it and repeat it, or to face it and transform it. The choice, as always, is yours. and so is the freedom. 10th Stoic lesson. You are free when you govern your emotions, not when you eliminate them. Many believe emotional freedom means feeling nothing, walking through life as if nothing hurts, not crying, not getting angry, not fearing, and not getting attached. And so when they feel something intense, they get frustrated, they judge themselves, they say things like, "I thought I was over this. I shouldn't be feeling this way." This isn't how a strong person feels. But the problem isn't what you feel. It never was. The problem is the mistaken belief that emotional mastery means eliminating emotions, when in reality, true mastery lies in knowing how to govern them. Marcus Aurelius, who felt just as much as you do, who faced loss, betrayal, fear, and pressures few could withstand, never wrote, "Do not feel." He wrote, "Let your mind retain its own power. Let it not blend with the noise outside nor the chaos within." That is Stoic wisdom. That is emotional freedom. That is real strength, to feel everything without letting anything rule you. Because emotions are not the enemy. They are part of your humanity. They are not there to destroy you, but to reveal the state of your soul. Anger, sadness, anxiety, desire, melancholy. Each one has something to teach you, and you can't silence them with willpower alone. You can only decide what you will do with them. That is your freedom. It doesn't lie in not feeling, but in not being enslaved by what you feel. It doesn't lie in controlling everything, but in not allowing what you can't control to destroy your balance. It doesn't lie in avoiding chaos, but in remaining firm within it. And that firmness is not built by rejecting your emotions, but by integrating them consciously. Do you feel anger? Observe it. Listen to what part of you feels threatened. Then choose to act with justice, not impulse. Do you feel sadness? Allow it. Feel what hurts. Cry if you need to, but don't drown in it. Breathe. Reflect. And when you're ready, rise from the clarity the storm leaves behind. Do you feel fear? Don't suppress it. Ask what it's trying to tell you. Use that fear as a drive to prepare better, not as an excuse to stop. That is what it means to govern. That is what it means to be a conscious human being. That is what it means to live from your center, not from reactivity. Because you are not here to become a soulless stone. You are here to be a human with direction, sensitive with wisdom, intense with temperance, emotional with virtue. And that isn't achieved by ignoring what you feel, but by developing the muscle of willpower that decides above the chaos. That is the Stoic task, not to numb the soul, but to strengthen it, not to eliminate emotions, but to elevate the awareness that governs them, not to anesthetize life, but to live it with courage, even when it hurts. And how do you achieve that? By training, daily, like someone training an inner martial art. Every time you feel a strong emotion, you have an opportunity. You can react like you always have, or you can pause, observe, breathe, and act from a different place. And if you fail, if you explode again, if you lose your center again, it doesn't matter. You get up, you observe yourself, you learn, and you try again, because emotional mastery is not perfection. It is progress, it is discipline, it is humility, it is having the will to not give up on yourself. Marcus Aurelius wasn't perfect. You don't have to be either, but you can be conscious. You can practice. You can decide that from now on, you will no longer let your emotions decide for you. You can choose courage, clarity, the peace that comes from acting according to your principles, not your moods. That, and only that, is true freedom, because true freedom doesn't come from not feeling. It comes from feeling and still choosing. You're not free because you don't cry. You're free because you cry and still move forward. You're not free because you never get angry. You're free because you get angry and still choose not to harm. You're not free because you have no fear. You're free because you feel fear and still act with virtue. And you right now are closer than ever to that freedom. Every time you choose to breathe before responding. Every time you choose to observe before reacting. Every time you choose to act from your highest self, even when everything inside is trembling. You're showing that you're no slave. You are the master, the architect of your emotional destiny. You are stoic. There's something no one teaches you, but that you discover through pain, through silence, alone. Life won't wait for you to learn to govern yourself. Emotions will keep arriving unannounced. Loss will continue to knock on your door. Disappointments will sneak in through the cracks of your soul. And there will be days when you feel at the edge of yourself, unsure how to hold what you feel. But right there, in that threshold of chaos, the possibility to choose is born, to keep reacting as always, or to awaken to a new way of living, a way that is calmer, more present, more grounded, more your own. That possibility doesn't appear overnight. It's trained, it's cultivated, it's repeated again and again in the most ordinary moments and in the most devastating ones too. And each time you choose not to get lost in what you feel. Each time you choose to observe, reflect, breathe and act from virtue, you're building something no one can take from you, your inner strength. In a world that pushes you to explode or to stay silent, Stoicism invites you to remain, to feel everything without becoming enslaved to anything, to cry without breaking, to act without losing yourself, to live with a steady soul even when everything around you shakes. And that practice is not cold, it's not robotic, it's not about pretending emotional superiority. It is, in truth, a deeply human way of caring for yourself. Because when you learn to govern what you feel, you don't just heal yourself, you also stop hurting others, you stop projecting your wounds, you stop poisoning your relationships, you stop looking outside for what only lives in your center. And that is a gift that shows in your presence, in your peace, in your ability to be there without absorbing everything, to love without depending, to listen without judging, to support without overburdening yourself. Many believe being stoic means being hard, but that's not true. To be stoic, you must be brave, brave enough to look within, brave enough not to react the way your ego wants, brave enough to say, I will not let this emotion decide for me. And that doesn't come from perfection, it comes from commitment, from daily practice, from the genuine desire to become a little more free each day. Because being free doesn't mean having no emotions. It means having them, and still choosing with clarity, with virtue, with temperance. And if this stoic session leaves you with anything, let it be this: the awareness that your inner world is your greatest power, and you don't need everything solved to start living from there. You just need will and practice, and sometimes a little company. That's why this space exists, not just to learn philosophy, but to remind you that you're not alone, that there are others like you, who also feel deeply, who are also tired of reacting, who are also seeking to live from a deeper, more conscious, more truthful place. Here, we form a community of people who, like you, want more than just survival. They want transformation. They want to look at their emotions with respect, but without surrendering to them. They want to walk firmly, even when their soul trembles. They want to act with virtue, even when everything inside burns. And if this session touched something in you, if something you heard resonated with your story, your pain, your patterns, your need to change, then I invite you to stay with us, to be part of this stoic community, to subscribe so you don't walk this path alone, to support yourself through the process of freeing not from what you feel, but from what controls you. Because you are not weak for feeling, you are brave for wanting to govern yourself, you are wise for pausing to reflect, you are immense for seeking within when everything outside is just noise. And if this session gave you something, if it left you thinking, feeling, recognizing yourself, share it with the one who needs it most. Maybe that person who always reacts and doesn't know why, who cries and doesn't know how to calm down, who carries old guilt, or who still hasn't realized they can choose a different way to live. Help this message go further, not for me, not for numbers, but because the world needs more people with self-mastery, more tempered souls, more hearts that don't run from feeling, but don't drown in it either, more human beings with the courage to take responsibility for what they carry inside. And if you are on that path, I honor you, I thank you, and I'll see you in the next Stoic session, because this is just the beginning. Your voice matters here. Every reflection strengthens and uplifts our community, shaping the true essence of each individual and building our shared Stoic identity. The reflection with the most support will be pinned as the standard of this Stoic community. A community that doesn't run from pain, but walks through it with courage, with wisdom, with honor. Joining this Stoic community means breaking the chains that limit you and building an inner fortress no one can tear down. Follow us so you never miss another Stoic reflection again. Remember, every decision shapes your character. In the pinned comment, you'll find 3 paths, and each one exists for a reason. Some decisions seem small, but they change everything. If something inside you shifted as you listen to this, don't let it pass. Subscribing isn't just a click, it's a decision to no longer live asleep, to walk with awareness, with courage, with purpose. And if you choose to support this space as a member, you're not giving, you're planting. Thanks to you, this flame stays lit. Your presence allows us to keep sharing wisdom in a noisy world, building together a community of awakened, grounded, and free souls. And if there's still something in you that's craving more, enter our Stoic page, not to consume, to go deeper. There you'll find tools to help temper your inner life, to return to yourself each day, to that place where no one and nothing can take your peace away. We'll see you in our next gathering at Stoicism for Winners, where we'll continue to explore the riches of Stoic wisdom applied to modern life. Now, take the opportunity to expand your understanding of Stoicism with the recommended new sessions. Until we meet again, remember, you are the sole owner of your perception, the creator of your peace, and the warrior of your own battle. This is the legacy of Stoicism, the art of becoming invincible.